We are now officially live.
Hello everyone on Discord and on YouTube. Thank you for joining again and welcome to our Dhamma group where we will study together the Buddha's teaching and later have a discussion and Q&A. Today we will be joined as usual by Venerable Dhamma and the Sirimangalo community. And Venerable Dhamma is joining us from Sri Lanka in the meditation center. So if you're interested in doing a retreat or a course, then you should definitely consider that. So before we begin with our study of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and we will take together the 5 precepts and take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, because we do this every week to prepare our minds for studying the Dhamma and to remind ourselves of the basic principles of morality. And it's still the same formula as it was during the Buddha's time, the taking refuge. And when you recite it, you declare yourself a Buddhist. Is there someone in the Discord group, in the reading group, who would like to lead the recitation today?
Yeah, I would like to do it today.
Okay, thank you, Pramod. You may go ahead.
Aham bante tisaranena sahapanka silani yakami yutiyampi aham bante tatiyampi aham bante.
So the C's are pronounced as ja, not gat. And we should really change the text. It should be written out in full there. It's not written out in full and people don't understand that you're supposed to say it in full. You're supposed to make the request in full 3 times.
Yeah, sure, Bante. I'll repeat it. Aham bante tisaranena sahapancha silani yachami yutiyampi aham bante aham bante tisaranena sahapancha silani yachami titiyampi aham bante tisaranena sahapancha silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang sharanam gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang sharanam gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang sharanam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami.
Atiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Atiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Atiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Atiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Isaranagamanang nititang
Aham bante.
tama bante.
Ama bante.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sir.
Please repeat with the Venerable
I
line after line.
yeah. I didn't see that in the text. Sorry. Yeah. Ti saranam gamanang nititam.
Your next line is
Ama.
Parnatipata.
Yeah. Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samapadiyami.
Dinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adina dana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu micchācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu michakara viramani sikkhapadang
Micchācara.
michachara viramani sikkhapadam samajiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Stura meraya. I think that goes to the next page. Could you please move to the previous page? Yeah, thank you. Sura mirayam maja pamada thana viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibuting yanti tasma silang visodhaye.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for leading the recitation. It's a very wholesome thing. And to actively speak it and take refuge. So it's, yes, a very wholesome deed when we begin by doing that. So we will now move on to our reading of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta commentary by the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, which was the first discourse of the Buddha. And he's where he's preaching to the 5 ascetics, or the first monks. Before we start, please send a request if you haven't already to be on the reading list, on the reading group. And we usually read about 2 paragraphs. That's our orientation. And when we read, please read slowly and carefully. We don't have to rush. We want to understand the text and not finish it quickly. There's no need for that. And also please leave a pause between each paragraph, so there's time for questions, or the Venerable can give a remark or explanation which we otherwise may miss. And yeah, feel free to ask questions whenever you feel like you don't understand something. So we continue on the PDF, page 149. And the first so we're almost done with this section. It's only one paragraph. And it starts with, "It would be well to take to heart." I will post a reading list, which needs some editing, but the first reader for today would be you, Kiki. I cannot hear you. Otherwise, we will move on to Lara, and you can just let us know if you want to try again.
It would be well to take to heart the moral of this story and strive for freedom from all suffering through the practice of insight meditation. There would be no end of quoting similar stories from the Pali texts and commentaries. Let us now come to the experiences and episodes met with in modern times. A Dhamma teaching Sayadaw.
Please stop between each paragraph.
Sorry.
So just to recap that we've just finished talking about this monk. Remember the monk who practiced meditation, and during walking meditation he practiced so strenuously that he didn't eat sufficiently, he didn't sleep at all. And so the lack of nutrition combined with the exertion actually killed him. He died while doing walking meditation or something like that. Became a deva and was disgusted by the fact that he hadn't become enlightened and instead was born as a deva, as an angel. Went to see the Buddha and had a conversation with the Buddha, after which he became at least a Sotapanna. Yes, he became a Sotapanna.
A Dhamma teaching.
No, there was one more. That was not the one we just dealt with. The one we dealt with after that was. It's actually, he doesn't mention, but I'm pretty sure it's from Deepa Wangsa or some. It's got to be from some Sri Lankan commentary. It's not a story in the Buddha's time, but it's a story from one of the old texts about this woman who wanted her husband killed so she could be with his brother. So his brother killed him, and he was reborn as this animal, and that animal eventually was born as a child and wouldn't have anything to do with his own mother. Was born in her womb but wouldn't have anything to do with him. Told his grandfather the story about how he had him killed. And as context, we're talking about the origin of suffering. So after each story, he's going to remind us that it's the craving, the attachment that we still have that leads us to be reborn. And each one of these stories is an example of how craving leads us to be reborn and forces us to go through the cycle again and again and again.
A Dhamma teaching Sayadaw. From 1937 to 1939, I resided at Thong Nguyen Tai Kuang Monastery of Mala Myang. At that time, there was a Dhamma teaching Sayadaw of great repute. At the traditional almsgiving ceremony, a week after the death of a lawyer donor of his, he gave the following discourse as the merit sharing service for the departed one.
Well, if you're interested, it's not like it's deep Dhamma, but this is Buddhist culture in Theravada Buddhist countries, at least. 7 days after someone dies, there's a ceremony, and often 30 days after, like a month after the person dies, 90 days after the person dies, 1 year after the person dies. I mean, it depends on the individuals, but these are commonly taught by monks and as a tradition handed down in society. That this is when people will do almsgivings as a I mean, it's twofold. Any excuse to give food to monks is good. It's not bad, or it's not like the monks are greedy by suggesting this or by promoting this. It's good to give food to monks. I mean, that's all you give to them. It's not like the monks can get rich off of food. Giving food to monks is always a good thing. It's just part of Buddhist society. There's nothing shameful about the fact that monks receive alms. It's just that's their part in society to give alms to the monks. It's just part of Buddhist society. So kind of an excuse to do something special. It's also an excuse to listen to the Dhamma. At the very least to listen to chanting, but in a good Buddhist center, and very common in Sri Lanka, it sounds like in Myanmar as well, or Burma as well, to give a talk on the Dhamma, to give a teaching to the people. So those of you who are not in Buddhist societies, who are interested in this sort of thing, it can be a good idea after someone passes away to figure out these traditions and find some monks, give them some food and listen to their Dhamma. They don't have to be special in terms of teaching the Dhamma, but just to have someone have the duty to teach you something, to say something, even just to recite some verses. That's a good sort of ceremony. You don't have to read too deeply into it. Just think, wow, this is what we do as Buddhists, and it's great because it's a chance to listen to the Dhamma. And people scoff at these sort of things for various reasons, and it can be unwholesome to be critical of these sorts of traditions. Obviously, there's a lot of wholesomeness that can be gained from this sort of excuse. I think it rubs for non-Buddhists the wrong way, or new Buddhists the wrong way, because they think, well, what's the purpose? Why? There's no significance. 1 week after the person dies, well, there's no meaning behind that. It's just like a birthday. A birthday, there's no meaning behind it, but it's kind of an excuse. Or that's even a little bit cynical. It's a tradition. And it's a good tradition, and it has value and purpose and merit. And just keeping to traditions, if they're good traditions, can be a really good thing. It helps you do away with your own judgmental nature of being critical of everything. You just, this is what we do, and I'm not going to have an opinion on that. I'm just going to do it the way everyone else does it. I examine it, and it's a good thing, and it's the way everyone else does, so I'll do it the way everyone else does. Sometimes you find Buddhists, and you can perceive the conceit that they have, where they'll change a tradition, or they'll say, people do it this way, but I do it this way. And you can quite often perceive the conceit in the fact that they don't do according to tradition. Traditions are like techniques of meditation practice, following the technique, doing it as I've talked about this before. It's not that doing it this way is better than doing it that way, but there is value in doing the way it's taught as a means of, at the very least, giving up conceit.
I mean, Bhante, even the Buddha, I'm not sure if he encouraged it, but he wasn't against traditions if they were, like you say, beneficial to the extent of wholesomeness. And even in in every culture. I think he didn't specify it has to be the Indian culture which he was living inside, but it sort of points out that Buddhism is also about conventional reality and making use of every chance you get to make something good out of it, is what I understand. Because if we don't have these special occasions, then we have nothing. Like every day you can't make every day special, even if you say to yourself every day is special, make everything out of every day, but in reality no one does that.
It's kusala upaya. It's an upaya, which means a scheme, sort of. Scheme is not the right word, but means. In other words, it doesn't have any intrinsic value itself, but it's used to provide to be a vehicle for wholesomeness. Yeah, if we didn't have these days, when would we do anything special? Buddha noted that traditions lead to strength. Culture that keeps its traditions, a society that keeps its traditions, one of the factors for longevity, or the continuation of a society or of an organization. Doesn't try to make new rules or give up old traditions.
Kiki, you can continue if it works now. Unfortunately, it seems like it doesn't work, but thank you for trying. Then Martin, I think you're the next one.
This life of mine is uncertain, but my death is certain. I must inevitably die. My life will end only in death. Life is impermanent and unstable. Death, on the other hand, is definite and permanent.
Bhante, what does here mean? Death is permanent. Which kind of death is he referring to?
Nityang is well, with death. It's the end of that life, so it is permanent. But I don't think that's the thrust of the statement or the teaching. Point is that life is unstable. You can't ever be sure when you're going to die. Death is a certainty. You're going to die eventually. But it's also permanent in the sense that it ends everything of this life. All your belongings are done or gone. You never get them back. Even if you're reborn as a human in the same country or same area, you don't get to reclaim all of your belongings. Your relatives, you don't get to reclaim them. It's permanent. There's no going back.
Thank you.
This contemplation on death was the theme of his discourse. I was present on that occasion and heard his discourse personally. Within a few days of this event, we heard the sad news of demise of the Dhamma teaching Sayadaw. We thought then that he would have passed away contemplating death as he had taught only a few days ago. We heard that the Sayadaw had met a violent death at the hands of assassins who had stabbed him with a dagger.
Pramod, are you reading?
Hello? Yeah. You want
Hello?
me to
Yes.
continue? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Could you please point me where it was stopped?
It starts with about 3 years later.
Thank you. Thank you. About 3 years later, a certain young boy from Magwi came to Mavlam Ying accompanied by his parents. He had been nagging his parents, asking them to take him to Mavlam Yang. On arriving at the monastery of the former Sayadaw, the boy informed his parents that he was, in a previous existence, the presiding Sayadaw of that monastery. He could tell everything about the monastery, and whatever he said was found to be true. He remembered all the leading monks from the nearby monasteries and addressed them by the names he had used to call them by previously.
Bhante, is Sayadaw like a title and not a name?
Sayadaw is like Ajahn in Thailand. Not exactly, because they also have Ashin in Burmese. Sayadaw is what they use to it's a title for big teacher. It might actually be because the Mahasi Sayadaw, he got that name because of his presiding at a monastery with a Mahasi, which it's something like means something like a big drum or something. But the monastery was like the Mahasi monastery or something. I don't know. But when he took over that, when he was given authority over that monastery, he became the Mahasi Sayadaw. His name was Sobana. Sobana was his Pali name. Sobana. But he became known as the Mahasi Sayadaw because that's where he was given status as a head monk. So it may be, I'm sure you can look this up and find out what the word means. But may mean the head of a monastery, something like that.
When he was asked by mentioning the name about a certain man, who was a close disciple of the late Sayadaw. The boy relied, "I'm afraid." When questioned what he was afraid of, he recounted how that man, in association with some others, had stabbed him to death, how he had run away from them, and coming to the river bank and finding a boat, he made his escape riding on the boat. Later, arriving at a village on the Magway coast, he said he entered the house of his present parents. The visions he saw of how he had fled from his assassins, how he had found a boat on the river bank, how he took a ride on it and came to the house of his parents were all signs of destiny that had appeared to him as death approached. This is also a notable incident that confirms that attachment brings forth new existence.
So to recap, there are three catalysts for rebirth. Of course, rebirth is caused by attachment, craving, desire, thirst, whatever you want to call it. But there has to be something that you attach to. And when you're dead, what are you going to attach to, right? What is it that the mind attaches to? It no longer attaches to the body. There are three things that are the catalyst, the three things that someone attaches to. There may be many things, but one of these things is that which the mind fixates on, coalesces around, and really depends upon to create the next life. And the first one is a kamma nimitta. So a vision of a kamma, something you did during the life, and it can be something that you did right at the moment of death. First of all, it can be if you had weighty kamma, like you killed your mother, killed your father, killed an arahant, hurt the Buddha, defiled a bhikkhuni, created a schism in the sangha, that sort of thing. Weighty kamma, or if you are practicing samatha at the moment of death. This is another sort of weighty kamma, heavy kamma. That's what that will be the vision that you see. It will be of that kamma, of that deed, and clinging to that will lead to rebirth. Or it can be something that you did at the moment of death. It can be something that you did many times during your life. So whatever you have practiced habitually, and if none of those are prevalent or predominant or present, it will just be some kamma, something that had an impact on your mind, something that was ethically significant, some good or bad deed that you did. It would just be at random. And the mind clings to that. So that's kamma nimitta. That's kamma. That's kamma, not kamma nimitta. The vision of the actual kamma. Kamma nimitta is the second one, and it's a symbol of the kamma. So suppose you killed someone with a knife, or you were a butcher and you killed with a certain knife or a certain instrument. It might be a vision of that instrument. It might be just a vision of blood, if you were cruel or murdered many living beings. And if you did good deeds, it could be a vision of a gift that you gave, a vision of a monk's robe, if you gave monk's robes, that sort of thing. Some symbol of a deed that you did. That's called kamma nimitta. Kamma and kamma nimitta. The third is called gati nimitta, and that's what he's talking about here. For some people, it will be a dream sequence of the process that leads you to be reborn in a certain place. So this guy didn't actually get in a cart and run away from these people who actually killed him. They'd already killed him. But he had this dream-like sequence. It's not a dream, but it's basically of the similar sort as a dream, where you experience all of this, which culminates in entering into the womb of your mother or wherever you're reborn.
Bhante, do all of these have to be a heavy karma? Because it sounds like whatever is the most heaviest in your mind or has the strongest impression is what will be your inclination.
No, that's what I said. There are 4. The first is heavy kamma. The second is something that you did at the moment of death. The third is something you did habitually. And the fourth is just something that you did that had significance and was something that had ethical significance on your mind. It had an impact or left an impression in your mind.
But it doesn't sound like the practice of mindfulness comes into any of those categories, Bhante.
If you practice mindfulness habitually, that would be a habitual karma for sure. Why would you think karma wouldn't be ethically significant?
Maybe I was looking at it the wrong way, but if you practice letting go, then there's nothing to grab on, was my thought behind it.
Well, yes, but it would be, it just means that there will be a more purified state of mind, a pure state of mind. It's like if you gave gifts, you're not really holding on, but you'll hold on to the image of it. So suppose you did lots of mindfulness meditation. Well, of course, the mindfulness isn't something you hold on to, but the meditation practice, the good deeds that you've done, create a narrative for whatever craving that you have left to create a new rebirth. But it's an example of why, or it's an explanation of why mindfulness would lead to a pure birth. Because craving that's left is more refined.
Yes, that makes sense, Bhante. Thank you. The inclination that whatever resonates with whatever you did mostly or what was important to you in a way also, maybe. But I think I'm trying to put it too much in a box, so I will stop. Thank you, Bhante.
Born as a buffalo for 40 kyats. In a certain town in Moniwa district, there lived a man who was engaged in the business of money lending during the British regime. He asked for the return of a loan from a certain farmer who replied that he had already repaid the money he had borrowed from the man. The moneylender repeatedly insisted that the farmer had not yet repaid the loan. Finally, he declared, "May I become a buffalo in your house if I have really asked for a double payment of the 40 kyats, which you say you have already repaid." With this oath, he pressed again for the return of his loan. The poor farmer was thus obliged to knowingly repay again the loan he had taken. Soon afterwards, the moneylender passed away. A young buffalo was born in the house of the farmer who had made the double payment of his loan. Guessing that the moneylender had taken rebirth in his house as a buffalo, the poor farmer called out the young buffalo, "Saya, Saya, please come," in the same way that he used to address the old moneylender. The young buffalo answered his call and came to him. Believing now that the old moneylender had really become a buffalo in his house according to his oath, The farmer started to talk about this incident. Thereupon, the daughter of the departed moneylender went to the court, suing the poor farmer for defaming her father.
Not a very nice family, this family of moneylenders.
A judge
I
who
guess
heard
if you hear someone saying that your father was born as a buffalo, I guess it's an emotional thing. It's funny because if you ever were to say that in the West, people would be, of course, very upset. Could you imagine? Farmer next door says, "Oh yeah, your father, he's born as a buffalo in my barn." People would be quite upset to hear that sort of thing. But it's a wake up, to discuss even these sorts of stories, right? Imagine a lot of people listening are incredibly skeptical, probably outright repulsed or averse to hearing these sorts of things that just sound fantastical and unbelievable. But with acceptance of these sorts of stories, if you actually accept that this sort of thing can happen, it really provides a broader, broadening of your horizon. There's one coming up. Which one are we at? No, the next one. That there's lessons to these. They remind us of the fact that this saying you hear Buddhists often relate, that it's hard to find someone who is not your mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter in a past life. And then the next story, not this story, but the next story is really going to drive that home, that we often harm beings, kill other beings, and we really wouldn't. It's not something we would do if we were to know our relationship to those beings. We might end up killing. We probably do end up killing our mother, or father, or sister, or brother, or son, or daughter, our best friend, our teacher. We end up killing them. Life after life after life, killing and being killed by people who we were once very, very close to.
Bhante, this reminds me of something I heard even in science to be, well, proved that I think Dawkins, one of the scientists, was saying that if you take a slice of photograph back in time, if for your grandfather and so on, you will see that, at one point we were fish and we were whatever, all the species. And so in a way, all the animals, although it's indiscernible, are our cousins, are our distant cousins. So I mean, even in science, this is like, saying this kind of similar things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difference and the important difference is the experiences. So you can say we're cousins, but that doesn't really have any meaning. If you go by science, if you just go by the physical aspect of reality, just me being a distant cousin with every being on Earth doesn't have the same weight to it as I lived a whole life with this person, and they had the role of my mother. often in past lives, the life just before this one, or yeah. As we'll see in the next story, it really hits home this idea when this person realizes what they've done to someone who was actually their best friend.
The judge who heard the case sent for the appellant, the defendant, and the young buffalo together with witnesses for both sides. In the court, the farmer called out, "Saya, please come," to the buffalo in the same way that he used to address the moneylender. The buffalo responded to his call by coming to him. The moneylender's daughter used to address her father as Shin Shin. When she said in the court, "Shin Shin," the buffalo went to her. The judge came to the conclusion that the poor farmer was making an honest statement without any intention of defamation, and accordingly discharged the case. From this story, it is not hard to believe that a human being may be reborn as a buffalo. It is plain, therefore, that craving will cause rebirth. It should be observed also that swearing a false oath is liable to lead to calamity. Ya knows small measure of rice. There was a village of about 400 houses called Chayunyo, 10 miles northwest of Taiyuan. Two young men of the village, Ya Nyo and Ba Sain, who were friends, earned their living by going around villages selling betel leaves. Coming back one day from their rounds, Ba Sain went short of rice. On the way, he borrowed a small measure of rice from Ya Nyo to cook his dinner. After dinner, while they made their way back to the village leisurely in the moonlight night, Ba Sain was bitten by a poisonous snake and met with instant death. It was sometime between 1926 to 1936 when the two friends were about 20 or so.
Probably because Ba Saing clung to the thought of the loan of the small measure of rice at the time of his death. He was reborn as a cockerel in Nga Nyo's house. Nga Nyo trained it to become a fighting cock and entered it into a fight. It won the first 3 fights, but unfortunately lost the 4th fight because its opponent was bigger and stronger than itself. Nga Neo vented his disappointment and anger by holding his cock by its leg and thrashing it against the ground. Bringing the half-dead cock home, he threw it down near the water pot, where Nga Neo's cow came and touched it with her lips, as if expressing her sympathy.
Yeah, this was a thing. I think it's slowly dying out, or if it's not died out yet, in these parts of at least Southeast Asia, where they would actually pit roosters against each other, fighting to the death. So you would see these sometimes in villages in northern Thailand. Keep them these roosters locked up in cages, and they make them really angry. I think. I mean, there's techniques to make your roosters stronger, but it's really a horrible thing. There was a lot of backlash in modern times against it, and rightly so. It's just a barbaric sort of sport. But people, people who drink alcohol would get drunk, and then they bet on it. They have. I mean, we have in other cultures like dog pits, dog fights, right? The kind of fights that people have where they drink a lot of alcohol and bet money on which animal is going to win.
The poor cock died afterwards and took conception in the womb of the cow. When the calf had grown up considerably, it was bought for 4 kyats by his friends for a feast, which Nga Nyo would also join. While they were butchering the calf and cutting up the meat in preparation for their feast, a couple from Tao Wung Duing Yi, a clerk and his wife, happened to arrive on the scene. Expressing her sympathy for the calf, the clerk's wife said, "If it were my calf, I wouldn't have treated it so cruelly. Even if it had died a natural death, I wouldn't have had the heart to eat its flesh. I would have just buried it."
Interesting. There seems to be some implication that there's vibes connect. There's a connection. I mean, it's all speculation, but I would guess that there's potentially past life connections with all of these beings that aren't known and therefore aren't being told. Like, it sounds like actually the love that the kindness and therefore attachment that the woman had for the calf causes the calf to be reborn in her womb. How else would it be the case? The calf doesn't know that this woman is expressing this compassion and kindness towards the calf. And the same as the calf's mother in the first place, that touched the rooster with its lips. And maybe there the rooster was cognizant of this calf's compassion and kindness, or the cow's compassion and kindness, and that led to attachment. But I would guess there's a deeper connection that is also worth considering and thinking about and contemplating, the fact that there's a lot going on here, jumping from one life to another based on our connections. Who knows what connections all of these beings have had in past lives? And a big reason why the cow goes to the half-dead rooster, a big part of it is their connection from a past lives, and likewise that the woman has such strong feeling. I mean, it's a testament to her goodness, of course, but quite likely beyond that, she has a specific connection to this being that is born as a calf and killed by the owner, by the butcher, I guess, or whoever whoever it is that's doing the killing, that there's a resonating there because of past life connections she has with that being, and that's a part of why that being is then born in her womb in the next life. Mahayana Buddhists are very big into these sorts of connections, talking about how we're all connected. But I mean, it's very much a part of Theravada Buddhism as well, acknowledging and considering that we're all connected in ways that we often don't recognize. But that resonate, how you meet someone in life and you very quickly become friends or very quickly become enemies with that person. It's not the only reason you become friends or enemies with someone, but sometimes the connections just seem random. Why this person? Why not that person? I notice it changes a lot when you become Buddhist as well. When you start to practice mindfulness, some people who you didn't pay attention to before suddenly become good friends. And people who you were good friends with before suddenly they can't stand you, or you don't feel comfortable with them, and that sort of thing. But there definitely are these connections.
Sometimes afterwards, a son was born to the clerk's wife. The child remained without speech until he was 7, when one day his father told him, "Son, please talk to us. Today is my payday. I'll buy and bring back some nice clothes for you." Keeping his promise, the father came back in the evening with some pretty garments for his son. He said, "Son, here, these beautiful clothes are for you. Do speak to us now." The boy then uttered, "Nya knows measure of rice." "Son, just talk to us. Not only a measure, I will buy a whole bag of rice for you." Thereupon the boy said, "If so, put the bag of rice on the cart. We will go to settle my debt." Putting a bag of rice on the cart as requested, they set off on their journey. The father asked the son, "Now, where to?" The child directed his father to drive towards the north of Taiwanji. Eventually, they came to Chovanju village, where the son said, "That's it. That's the village," and kept on directing his father through the village lanes until they came to Nya Nyo's house. Upon inquiring whether it was indeed Yu Nyo's house, Yu Nyo himself confirmed it by coming down from the house as he approached the cart. The child hailed him, "Hey, Nya Nyo, do you remember me?" The elderly man was offended to be addressed as Nya Nyo by a mere child, the age of his son, but was pacified when the clerk explained, saying, "Please do not be offended, Nya Nyo. This child is under some strange circumstances."
Okay, we will finish the story next time since we already hit the hour. So thank
We
you
should finish
everyone
it
for
now, no?
reading. No? Okay. Because I think... Oh, okay, it's not long. Alright, then I will go on. When they got into the house, the boy began, "So, Nyanyo, you don't remember me? We were once together selling betel leaves, going around the villages. I borrowed a small measure of rice from you. Then I was bitten by a snake and died before I could return the loan. I became a cockerel in your house. After winning 3 fights for you, I lost the 4th because my opponent was much stronger than I was. For losing that fight, you beat me to death in anger. Half that, you threw me down near the water pot, and a cow came and kissed me. I took conception in her womb and was reborn as a cow. When I became a heifer, you killed me to eat. At that time, the clerk and his wife, who are my father and mother now, came by and expressed sympathy for me. After my death as a cow, I was born as a son to my present father and mother. I have now come to repay my debt of the measure of rice. All that the child recounted was found to be true by Unyo, who wept, feeling repentant for all the ill treatment he had meted out to his former friend. With this story, I want to stress again that unless craving has been rooted out, repeated rebirths, and new existences are unavoidable.
Sadhu.
Okay, then now we can have discussion about the text and questions if there are any. And if there aren't, we will slowly move to the written questions, but feel free to use your microphone whenever you feel the need. And if it's useful, of course. And also to the YouTube audience and to the Discord who are not on stage, you can write your questions down in the chat and we will organize them and slowly ask whatever you write. But try to stick to important questions and questions are sincere and related to the practice and Buddhism. I mean, I only have one remark that would be, and we will still have more examples, but if ever someone says that it's great that in Buddhism we have this rebirth, and you can just show them these stories if they really think it's great. But I also like what you said, Bhante, that in a paper, I think, or I'm not sure anymore, that in Buddhism we don't believe in rebirth, but we don't also we neither believe in death.
Hello, guys. Hello, Manta. I have a question that he's home. So, can we define debt and loan? In this story, it looks like the landowner multiplied the actual loan, but I know that when people ordain, they can't have debt. So maybe define what the debt is exactly, please. Thank you.
Define what debt is. Debt is when you make an agreement with someone where you take money from them and eventually return it.
Yeah, but there are other situations. For example, if the government said that there is a new rule, and now if you don't obey, you need to pay for that. Is it a debt?
So they might consider it a debt. But I mean, I think you're kind of looking at it the wrong way. You're thinking that a debt is something real. It's not real. And it's not even karmically significant. The only thing that's significant is your state of mind. So, as in this case, it wasn't even about a debt. The story wasn't about. Oh, sorry. This last story was about a debt. Yeah. So disregard that. In this case, he feels bad because this was his friend, and he really intended to remunerate his friend because he put his friend out on a whole measure of rice, which I guess is like a cup of rice or something. And so it wasn't the debt; it was his feeling about the debt.
I see. So, a situation that I just voiced won't prohibit the ordination. Is that correct?
Ordination is different. The debt for ordination is nothing like what leads to rebirth. In ordination, we have prohibitions against debt because it creates problems for the Sangha. If we allowed people to ordain who had debts, they could use it as a means of running away from debt. And then society would look at Buddhist monastics in the wrong way. The problem was big in the time of the Buddha because kings would feel obligated to let the monks off the hook for their debt because of their appreciation or their reverence for monastic sangha. So it's a big deal perhaps in Buddhist countries where the king is Buddhist and that sort of thing. In modern society, it's not that big of a deal. They'll just create the same problems for the monk. But I mean, there are other issues, right? You could declare bankruptcy as a monk to get out of your debt because you know that you're going to be taken care of as a monk, right? You're going to at least have a place to live and food. So certainly it will leave the monastic sangha open to criticism, and it can lead to false monks ordaining for the wrong reason and being corrupt and not interested in actually practicing the Dhamma. But that has to do with any kind of monetary debt.
Got it. Thank you.
So any monetary debt fulfills that disqualifier.
So Bhante, in this story, it seems both good and bad. I don't know, because it's clinging that led to the person who owed the rice. So he was clinging to that fact that he wanted to repay his friend, but at the same time, it was good that he wanted to repay his friend. So it's kind of a bit mixed up. And you could also then say, maybe the reason, because they were clinging to repaying that debt, helped them to become a human again. Seems complicated.
Well, it is complicated, but I don't think the dead had much to do with the ability to be reborn as a human. That would have much more to do with good qualities that he had developed. Or, yeah, good qualities that were at least in his mind at the time of death.
Yeah, because in the beginning it seemed like a bad thing to me. Maybe I also misunderstood the story first, but now it makes more sense, and it was a good thing they were trying to do, even though they suffered for it.
I mean, what you can see is the fact that the child wants to repay the debt is a sign of honesty and integrity, which are good qualities. So the point is that he had those qualities, and that allows him to be born as a human being, and not just a human being. The truth is, he isn't born as a human being, right? He's born as a rooster, and that might have something to do with the debt, with his worry or his fear about the debt. His worry is delusion. Delusion leads to the animal realm. The fear, the disliking of not being able to repay the debt can put you in a position where you have to suffer pain. And disliking leads to more pain, that sort of thing. I mean, it's complicated. You can't really dissect it, but there's that sort of relationship.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Bhante, I'd like to present with you our first question that we have. The question is, can you please clarify if all traditions need to be followed blindly, especially if there is no merit, like making sacrifices to gods or praying to God?
No, you don't have to follow any traditions. It's just that traditions, if you examine them and see that there's value in them, then you should just follow them. The point is that you don't just decide, you don't say, look at them and say, oh, that's just tradition, I'll do it my way. But it is valuable to look at a tradition and see whether there's harm being done by that tradition. Like there's a tradition in some Sri Lankan circles, at least, I don't know if it's prevalent, where they'll throw away all the food after it's given. And so in Florida once, I've talked about this several times before, but in Florida once, they had this big ceremony at the Sri Lankan monastery where they had 28 Buddha statues. And so it was a celebration of the 28 Buddhas, and there's a whole verse for the 28 Buddhas that's recited. It's like the last 28 Buddhas, somehow they've got names for them. And in front of each Buddha statue, they put a half-liter, I don't know, it must have been at least half a liter, maybe it was 1 liter, but these huge glasses of pure fruit juice. Like 2 or 3 different kinds of fruit juice. One glass of water, 2 or 3 glasses of fruit juice, something like that, in front of each Buddha statue. So times 28, that was a lot of juice. And at the end, they just dumped it out. At the end of the ceremony, they wouldn't drink it. That's against their tradition. And so they just threw it out. And one of the American participants came up and asked me afterwards. They said, "Why are they just throwing out all that juice?" And my take on it, takeaway from it was that's the sort of thing that leads to censure, leads to criticism. Outsiders, it won't lead to faith, it won't lead to confidence, it will lead people to think these people are just wasteful and irresponsible. I don't think it's really a Buddhist quality to throw things away like that. So I've had a kind of a criticism of giving food to the Buddha in the first place, partially for that reason at least. So here we don't, or we are, I don't think they throw away the food. I think someone does. I'm not actually sure. No, maybe not. They do just throw it away, I think. Anyway, it's a complicated, certainly is a long-standing tradition to give food to the Buddha statue and then just throw it away afterwards. I think there's room for the sort of questioning of that sort of tradition that I've brought up. I may be wrong. And certainly famous Buddhist teachers and meditators have extolled the virtues of that sort of tradition. So I certainly don't want to raise any hackles there, but it's an example of something that we can at least question and determine whether it's right or wrong. Even good traditions, good, well-meant tradition, well-meaning traditions can be changed if you decide that they're just not valuable.
Thank you, Bhante. Here is the next question. Is it possible to practice Satipatthana Vipassana during the dying process? If so, how far into the process is it possible to be mindfully noting?
I don't have an answer for you there. I mean, it certainly is possible to be mindful during death. I can't give you an answer. It doesn't seem like a valuable answer either. I'd be able to tell you exactly when. But it is valuable to know that you can be mindful at the time of death, and you really should be. And it's a great reason for, a great example of the value of practicing now is because at the moment of death, you'll be skilled in the practice of mindfulness. And so you'll be able to apply what you've trained in for that very important event, so that when the various memories come up, they don't become your Dhamma, Kamma Nimitta, Gati Nimitta, the three things that can lead to potentially problematic rebirth. And you'll be able to resist the coarser temptations because of the purity of mind. And the only ones you won't be able to resist are the ones that are still remaining, the deeper, more subtle cravings and attachments, which often just lead to be reborn as a human or deva, an angel, in a good place, in a place that's suitable and supportive for the practice of mindfulness in the Buddha's teaching.
Bhante, here is the next question. When I am angry, I often vent to a trusted friend and feel better afterward. However, I have noticed I complain about others more and more. Is this skillful, or am I feeling ill will? Is there a better way?
No, that's not skillful. That's the appeasing of the anger. You don't like the experience of thinking about the thing that has gone wrong, and then you feel good about the new experience when you go to talk to your friend, and then they agree with you, or they validate your anger, that sort of thing. It makes you feel good. Your new experience is something that you can like and enjoy, and that reinforces the behavior. But and there's unwholesomeness in the whole cycle. There's unwholesomeness, of course, in the anger in the first place, but there's more anger, and there's the feeding and the affirming of the anger, and the affirming the rightness of the anger in your venting to your friend, right? So you're not only creating anger, you're creating delusion and conceit and wrong view. And then there's craving and attachment, clinging to the feeling of vindication when your friend agrees with you, or when you have a positive experience with your friend. There's all three. There's greed, there's anger, and delusion, and you're feeding them. You're doing that. So a much better practice would be to face your emotions, face your anger, face your craving for some kind of pleasure or some kind of vindication, your desire to vent. Venting, I suppose there's probably chemical consequences as well, like some kind of adrenaline, some kind of positive chemical reaction that goes on in the body that makes you feel good, and you cling to that feeling. There's probably some of that going on as well.
Ante, it seems like whenever we seek quick comfort, it's a warning sign that maybe we should stop and look why and where this is leading. It sounds like
I don't know that
case
it's
for
so much the quickness, it's just the wrongness of it. And the seeking of comfort in general is always going to be craving and desire. But suppose you had a habit of sending kindness, thoughts of kindness to the people who have done you wrong, or compassion. A Buddhist often feels compassion for people who do them wrong. They look at the situation as someone doing horrible things to themselves. The person who has done bad things to you is actually doing horrible things for themselves, and that's really bad for them. And it's going to lead to great suffering and stress in this life and in future lives as well. If you have that habit, that is a quick comfort and leads to quick freedom from suffering. If you use that as a response, it can be quite powerful and quite wholesome.
Thank you. That's a good point, Bante.
Here's the next question, Bante. I do the formal meditation, but found myself not being so mindful during the rest of the day, feeling too exhausted to keep on. I note these. Any advice?
I mean, you note the exhaustion. Well, that's mindfulness during the day. And it's obviously something that takes a lot of practice and a lot of training. So don't be too hard on yourself. Part of the process of being hard on yourself is coming to terms with non-self. So meditators who are hard on themselves still haven't appreciated the reality of non-self, that it's not under your control, that you can't make it be the way you want it to be all the time. And so there's a learning process, but you have to approach it from that perspective. But the problem is not that you can't control your mind to be the way you want it. The problem is that you want to control your mind to be the way you want it. And so approach it from that perspective and actually take those states of desire and frustration and disappointment as objects of meditation, as objects of mindfulness.
Here's the next question, Bhante. I do the formal meditation. I still feel anger and revengeful thoughts against beings whom I perceive to have wronged me. What is the best way to subjectively understand the disadvantage or danger of these thoughts?
Well, the thoughts themselves don't have any disadvantage. The disadvantage is in the anger. It's important to be able to separate that. Otherwise, you'll be confused in this way. You'll think, what's wrong with these thoughts? Because they're just thoughts, right? It'll be hard to see any sort of disadvantage. But if you separate and you focus on the anger, you'll be able to see quite quickly that the anger is unpleasant. It's just painful, mentally painful. And you feel more happy and more peaceful without it. Make sure you're noting them both. You should note the thoughts and note the anger, but be able to separate the two. A very important concept, that the thoughts are not the anger and the thoughts are not a problem.
Here's the next question, Bhante. What is bad about being stuck in a cycle of rebirth? I guess the answer is suffering, but I find it hard to imagine how ending this cycle is better than continuing existence, even if it involves suffering.
Yes. You've encapsulated the problem in a nutshell. What you've described is the problem. The problem in the sense that the reason why beings don't free themselves from the cycle, because they don't want to. They don't see the reason to. If they were explained about the ability to leave the cycle, they wouldn't be at all interested in it. It's not always true. In fact, some people are very interested in it, but for the wrong reasons. They're interested in ending it because of how much suffering they're experiencing. So you are probably not someone who is experiencing great suffering. People who are experiencing great suffering in their lives are often quite keen to end it. They want to kill themselves, thinking that that'll put an end to it. They want an end to samsara. And that actually gives you some inkling into the truth of the correct way to approach the whole idea of leaving the cycle, is that it's not something where you're averse to the cycle, where you look at the cycle as being unpleasant, or you dislike it in some way, or you dislike the idea of being reborn. Arahants don't dislike the idea of being reborn. They're just tired of it. They've had enough of it. They're disenchanted with it. Just have no desire is the point. And so the truth of it is that you should never try to convince yourself. You should never try to convince yourself that, yes, this is something that I should want, and this is something that I do want. Pretend, try to pretend to yourself, this is something that I want. I want to be free. Because you'll never want it. An Arahant doesn't want it. They don't want to be free. They don't want anything, is the point. And this actually does provide a path to freedom from the cycle. Meaning it provides a potential to have a state of mind that leads there. And what is that state of mind or perspective of mind? Perspective is one which says clinging causes suffering, which is the whole thrust of this part of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta that we've been reading in the past few weeks. The cause of suffering is craving. It's the cause of disappointment. It's the cause of addiction, and therefore disappointment, not getting what you want. And so you don't have to look at the broad sense of never being born again. You just look at how your craving causes suffering, or you just look at reality. And as you look at reality, you'll begin to see this truth, that craving causes suffering. And if I stop needing things to be a certain way or not be a certain way, I would stop suffering. And so you go from the reality in front of you. You don't start from some nebulous or vague or impossible to comprehend goal of nibbana or freedom from samsara. You start from the very real fact in front of you that you're suffering, and more importantly, you're causing yourself suffering. It's not someone else is hurting you or causing you suffering. You are doing it to yourself. And you go from there. And you start to learn the truth, is that craving causes suffering. And the more you see, the more refined your mind becomes, the more disenchanted you become with everything. Until eventually you just have no desire for anything. And from that freedom from desire comes freedom from suffering. I mean, it comes with greater and greater peace and happiness, and wisdom and clarity and certainty, confidence and certainty that it's true. Nothing is worth clinging to. When you finally understand that, verify that for yourself and see it clearly without any possibility for uncertainty. And then you're free from craving, and you're free from suffering, and you're free from samsara. So when that person passes away, they're not reborn. But to tell that to someone, that they're not going to be reborn, most people, that's just horrifying. Unless, as I said, they're suffering terribly, in which case they want it. But the point is not to want it. The point is to be free from wanting of any kind. And when you're finally free, and that's not a trivial thing. It may sound like a choice that you make, and it's not. Even if you wanted to be free from wanting, you'll never get there. It's the goal of a long and powerful and profound practice. It starts with the first step. It starts with the step of seeing that you're suffering and learning about why it is that you're suffering and freeing yourself from that suffering step by step by step.
Bhante, here is the next question. I have Asperger's and ADHD and no medicine. I was sick one morning, so I skipped one session. I did the session in the evening, but then I lost the rhythm. What advice would you have to restart?
Well, there's no rhythm. Do it whenever you can. It is good to have a schedule, but you just restart the schedule. That's why it's good to have a teacher, because you have some kind of accountability. It can help. Some people, even they have a teacher, they still don't have the accountability and they still don't do it. But it can help. Encourage you to practice every day. I wouldn't take it too seriously. You should be careful not to reify things. The word reify means to turn nebulous concept into something real, something solid. So like a schedule or a breach of schedule. Don't turn it into something that it's not. It's an event that happened and it passed. It's gone. It doesn't exist. It's not affecting you now. It's past. You can change, you can make the present something very different. Kind of the remarkable thing about mindfulness is you really can practice it almost any time. Whenever you have time, you just decide to do it. Even if it's not formal meditation, all the better, but even if it's not, you can practice it right now.
Here's the next question, Bhante. How can one alleviate or subdue an inclination toward suicidality? I have heard from modern psychiatry that it is a means of escape, a coping mechanism. How can one wholesomely excise this?
I'll break it into at least two parts. There's more, but at least two. The two big ones are the thoughts and the emotions. So the thoughts are thoughts about how to kill yourself, about why to kill yourself. Thoughts are units of information. It's like you read a book and the person is saying, I want to kill myself. Reading the book doesn't make you want to kill yourself. You're just reading the book. This is what thoughts are. Thoughts are just the data. The emotion can trigger the thoughts and can be triggered by the thoughts, but it's separate. And if you separate the two out, then it doesn't matter how many times you think about killing yourself. It doesn't have any meaning or significance. But the emotions also don't have any meaning or significance. And you'll be able to see that as well when you're able to separate them and distinguish them. If you feel sad about your life, depressed about your life, it's actually just sadness, it's just depression. It doesn't have any connection to your life. It's triggered by a thought about your situation, right? For example. But it's separate. It's just an emotion. It doesn't have any significance whatsoever. You just note it. You say depressed, to try to teach yourself that this is depression. That's all it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. And most importantly, you don't try to fix them as problems. You try to see them as experiences. We're too set on fixing things, thinking. And so when you practice mindfulness, you think, this will fix my problem. That's the wrong attitude. If you want to fix your problems, you have to stop seeing them as problems, start seeing them as experiences. Stop trying to fix them, start trying to understand them. So we note, we apply mindfulness, not for the purpose of fixing, but for the purpose of understanding. This is how you should approach everything. When the thoughts arise, try to see them clearly. Not understand in the sense of examine them and analyze them, Just pay close attention to see them clearly as they are. And there's nothing complicated about them. They arise and they cease. That's actually the wisdom that we're seeking. It sounds like, hey, I already know that, but you really don't. It's really not clear in our minds that things arise and cease. If it was, the Buddha said, seeing arising and ceasing, better to live one day and see arising and ceasing than to live 1,000 years and never see arising and ceasing. That's how important it is. It's not you have to go looking for what is this truth or reality that he's talking about. It's something very simple. Arising and ceasing. That's about it. As you pay attention to the thoughts, the emotions, everything that you experience, you'll see that it has no significance. It just arises. All it does is arises and ceases. That's what you'll see. You pay attention enough, everything else will become irrelevant, illusory even. So much of it is just an illusion. Meaning making and narratives that we create in the mind that have no basis in reality.
Bhante, here is the next question. Why can I not observe my thoughts as they arise, but only remember them in retrospect? It is like the sky notices the clouds only after they pass.
You're too busy thinking. Like with seeing, you can only be mindful after you've already seen. Of course, because at the moment of seeing, you're busy seeing. Mindfulness is the processing of it. The point, I mean, the rough sort of simplification of it is normally when we see, or in this case, think of something, the next step will be to judge it. It's good, it's bad, and how to react to it. We will react to it with liking or disliking or fear or worry or doubt or depression or any of these things. So we'll say this is good, this is bad. With mindfulness, we say this is this. And that preempts any potential judgment or reaction. Mindfulness is saying this is this. And when that's all it is, there's no room for liking or there's no continuation. There's no link made or connection made to liking, disliking, identifying, any of those things.
Here's the next question, Bhante. When competing in combat sports, it's hard for me to not want to hurt my opponent. How should one integrate this?
You shouldn't practice combat sports. It's not a very Buddhist thing to do. Because you have anger towards, you're cultivating unwholesomeness. I think it's very hard to not cultivate unwholesomeness in that sort of situation. You have to overcome your thoughts of kindness and the welfare of the other person. How could you possibly be doing it in a way that promotes the welfare of the other person? Martial arts, you can. I mean, with martial arts, I think there's room in the sense of like sparring to tap the person. We used to do sparring in karate, and You wouldn't want to hurt the person. It wasn't at all about hurting the person. There's still the argument for the competition or the competitive nature of it, which, is kind of disgusting in a way. But the actual sparring as a means of honing both of your martial arts skills without actually inflicting pain on the other person intentionally. There's room for, there's argument can be made. That's not necessarily bad at all. But if you're actually causing pain to them, how could that possibly coexist with a application or a wish for the welfare, well-being of the other person? It's the opposite. You want to hurt them. It can't really be wholesome. You can't avoid unwholesomeness. There's no integration there. I think it's the fallacy with Muay Thai. I've talked about Muay Thai before. One curious thing about it is it gets kids off the streets. That's really no excuse. Muay Thai is surrounded by so much goodness, right? So much wholesomeness. And they'll talk about all that wholesomeness of respecting your teacher, respecting your opponent. This is an example of traditions that should die. I don't think Muay Thai is something that should exist. I think if they want to have something like that, they should find something that's not violent. They don't need something that's violent to do that. That being said, honestly, it's probably not near the worst of the things that go on. It's not a terrible thing. There's probably a lot of good that comes from it. So it's just one of those worldly things. But at the core, it's not something we should romanticize. It's certainly not a Buddhist thing, even though it's couched in a lot of wholesomeness. So there is wholesomeness, definitely, in Muay Thai, for example. There's a lot of wholesomeness surrounding it. But the core of it is unwholesome. I think there's no avoiding that.
Bhante, here is the next question. Could you please teach me how I can be a good person?
It said that there's no speaking about goodness without speaking about mindfulness. Meaning, I don't know what is the phrase in English. Yeah, basically, you haven't really talked about goodness if you haven't talked about mindfulness. Not meaning that there are other kinds of goodness, but it's just any discussion of goodness would be incomplete without mindfulness. Mindfulness is, in a way, the essence of the core practice of goodness. So if you want to be a good person, there's really no other way. There's no other reason, no other meaningful way, no other significant way to be good. Not charity, not morality, not even metta meditation, kindness meditation, compassion meditation. None of those are significant. Mindfulness that is significant. You want to be a good person? Mindfulness is the best sort of goodness. Oh, I don't know if you read our booklet on how to meditate. It's our take on practice that cultivates or trains one in mindfulness. We have an at-home meditation course that we offer for free. It's not about selling courses or something. Welcome to take the at-home meditation course. We have a meditation center with rooms. If you're interested in coming to practice meditation in person, We have a wonderful place here, quite a remarkable place where we are now, where it's the same temperature almost all year round. It gets a little bit hotter and a little bit cooler, but it's a very comfortable climate. There's very few mosquitoes, which is a big deal because I've been places where there are many mosquitoes. It's a big deal for Buddhists and Buddhist meditators. Buddhists because we don't kill the mosquitoes, but Buddhist meditators because not only do you not kill them, but you have to sit with them. If you sit in meditation and a mosquito lands on you, let's just say if there's lots of mosquitoes, it makes meditation difficult, especially walking meditation. We have good food. We have free lodging, free food, free instruction, and we live on the top of a mountain where there's a view of the other mountain, and the air is pure, the water is pure, the people are pure. This is a great place. Don't be scared of coming to Sri Lanka or coming here. This is one of the best places I've ever lived. Maybe the best place I've ever lived, to think of it. Quite possibly.
Bhante, here is our next question. Should Buddhist monks or anyone seeking nirvana have some sort of ascetic life in modern times? I feel like many people, including monastics, use Buddha's middle way as a way to skip spiritual suffering. Do we skip Buddha's ascetic life and its conditioning to who he became?
Well, there's value in asceticism, but it's a superficial sort of value. That's not to trivialize it. It is valuable. Practically speaking, asceticism to some extent is practically necessary, but it's superficial in the sense that it's not absolutely necessary. It's not the core of the Buddha's teaching, but it's practically speaking necessary sort of support for the practice. Without it, it's not likely that you're going to get very far. But meditators who come to practice meditation at our center are living extremely ascetic lives. Not to the greatest extreme. Like the greatest extreme is to live at the foot of a tree, for example. They don't eat one meal a day necessarily. Some meditators here do. Some meditators voluntarily decide of their own will to only eat one meal a day, and that's asceticism. That's a kind of asceticism. But they live very ascetic lives for the time that they're here. And that's an important part of what supports them in their practice. But theoretically, there's stories in the Buddha's time of kings and government officials, rich people, millionaires, or wealthy individuals becoming enlightened without any asceticism whatsoever.
Bhante, here is the next question. Is it okay in my daily practice outside of formal meditation to make friends with pain, for example, after noting it?
Is it okay? I mean, okay is a pretty vague sort of word, right? It's not gonna lead you to hell, most likely. So it's okay in that sense. Is it valid meditation practice? No. No, you're adding meaning to this, the pain. You know, you're adding a narrative, or you're adding baggage to it. You're creating some kind of narrative that defines your relationship with pain. And the truth is, you don't have a relationship with pain. Pain is not something that you have, or it's not yours. And so making friends with pain is excessive. It's not helpful. It's just a gimmick, really. You know, you can do this as a gimmick, and in the short term, it might bring some benefits. But you're going too far. No, you shouldn't make anything with pain, except wisdom. Wisdom to see pain as pain. That's it. See it arise and cease. If you want to know what you should do with pain, see it arise and cease. When you can do that, you're on the path to Nibbana. It sounds so trivial. It sounds like I can do that. That's easy. It's not that easy. I give an example, right? You feel pain, you think, okay, this is easy. I'm going to see this pain arise and cease. What could be easier? Pain comes. What do? You try to get rid of it. You try to escape it. You try to run away. You try to make it disappear. You're no longer watching it disappear. You're thinking, I made it disappear. That's delusion. You failed. You didn't see it clearly. When you can watch the pain and watch it disappear without your desiring it to disappear, without being deluded by thinking, oh, I made it disappear. You just see it arise and cease. When you can do that, you're on the path to Nibbana.
Here's the last question in Tier 1, Bhante. What is the right amount of effort in meditation? I don't push my mind to concentrate, as I worry that it builds a habit of anger, but also don't want to cultivate laziness by not pushing my mind.
I wouldn't think of it as pushing, just applying the mind. You can decide at any moment to be mindful. That's not quite true, not technically true, but practically speaking, it's true. You could decide right now to be mindful. It doesn't require pushing. You just do it, right? I can sit here, I can speak, and you can hear my voice, and you can say hearing anytime. You don't need to push yourself. Pushing is mostly related to delusion, or the view, or the perception of self, of control. That I'm in control, I'm going to make this happen. That's not how it works. You apply mindfulness whenever you think of it, whenever you are able to incline your mind to do so. But you don't have to push. Effort will grow as you cultivate mindfulness. It will especially grow as you start to see the hindrances more clearly. You see the stress of greed and anger, but you also see the tired and the laziness and the stiffness of mind. You see that more clearly. That will cultivate effort. Effort will come from that.
Thank you, Bhante. That will conclude our Dhamma group session for today. We are always grateful for your time. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who made this session possible, those who are running the show, organizing the questions, organizing the broadcast, organizing the reading, everyone who has taken part in doing the reading, and those who have added their contributions, people who have asked questions. Appreciate you for asking your questions. All of this is a practice of the Buddha's teaching. Practice of good deeds is a part of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha taught this. Good deeds are not things that in and of themselves lead to Nibbana. It's not enough for you to help organize these sessions or to ask questions at these sessions or even just to join these sessions. All of that is goodness. It's greatness, in fact. Great wholesomeness involved. But it's part of the Buddha's teaching because it supports our practice of mindfulness. You hear me talk and hear teachers talk so often about all you need is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the way. All you need to practice is mindfulness. But what's not made explicit is that you need a lot of support in order to be able to practice mindfulness. And one of the greatest supports is the cultivation of goodness. Obviously, how could you practice mindfulness if you didn't learn about it? But even having learned about it, how could you keep it up if you didn't have encouragement or clarification? If you weren't able to ask questions about it, right? Sure, all you need is mindfulness. But in order to practice mindfulness, you need a lot of other supportive factors. These sessions are a good example of that. Of that. Not just for being able to ask questions, of course, that's a big part of it, but also having a way to do good deeds. So don't lose sight of the fact that every deed that you do to help someone, to bring the Dhamma to someone, even if that means bringing it to yourself, the good deed of listening to the Dhamma, the good deed of appreciating the Dhamma, the good deed of appreciating that other people are learning the Dhamma, even just appreciating that now we have a Discord server with people in it, a YouTube channel with people tuned in. Appreciating all that is in and of itself a good deed. The patience and the ethics involved with joining is a good deed. Kind of, it's often explained as the partner to goodness. So performing goodness is accompanied by the absence of unwholesomeness. So even just having the patience to be here, be disciplined to not be distracted by Facebook or whatever other things are on the internet, to not be distracted by worldly affairs, to not give in to your desire to go and engage in entertainment or sensual pleasure of any sort, but to be here and to dedicate yourself to this. And there's so much great wholesomeness involved, much appreciation for this, and for this as an example of the sorts of things that we can do in life to better ourselves and to progress on the path that the Buddha taught so long ago, and which is still alive and well, being practiced and followed to its goal, to its fruition by people throughout the world. For all the goodness that has been performed on this occasion by all of you, by all of us, and through the power of all the goodness that you have all done in times prior in this life and in past life, that have led you to have the great fortune to be reborn as a human being, along with the power of the Buddha, the power of the Dhamma, the power of the Sangha. And may you all be protected from danger, protected from suffering and pain and enmity and disease and calamity. May you all live long, healthy, happy lives with the strength to face whatever challenges come your way. May you have the strength of mind to cultivate Buddha's training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. May your minds be fixed and focused on Buddha's way as a means of living your life towards the cultivation of wisdom and the ultimate peace, happiness, and freedom of Nibbana. Through your practice, may you find peace and happiness in this life. May you go on to be reborn in places that are conducive for the cultivation of a practice that leads to freedom from suffering. May you ultimately find the goal of greater and greater until ultimate peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering through the path, fruition, and Nibbana. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.